There's a specific kind of person in this world, maybe you, who goes quiet when they're hurting. Not quieter, silent, as if pain pulls a curtain down inside your chest and the world suddenly loses access to you. You don't lash out, you don't complain, you don't disrupt the room with your discomfort. You simply fold inward, quietly, neatly, as if you're trying not to take up emotional space, as if your suffering is something you must handle privately, so no one else has to carry even a sliver of your weight. But here's what most people don't understand. Your silence is not emptiness. It's containment. It's control. It's a lifetime of learning that your pain was safer locked inside than expressed out loud. When you're hurting, you don't raise your voice. You lower your presence. You shrink the signal. You vanish in the one moment you most need to be seen. And the world misreads you. They think you're fine. They think you're strong. Some even assume you're cold. But the truth is far more tender, far more human. You silence yourself because once upon a time, your voice came with consequences. Maybe conflict escalated. Maybe needs were dismissed. Maybe emotions were punished, mocked, or ignored. Maybe vulnerability felt like leaving the door unlocked in a dangerous neighborhood. So you adapted. You evolved. You protected yourself with the only armor you had: quietness, self-containment, emotional invisibility. And it worked. It protected you. It kept the peace. It minimized the damage. But now, years later, the paradox has emerged. The strategy that once saved you is the same strategy sabotaging you. You avoid burdening others, but end up carrying everything alone. You keep the peace, but lose pieces of yourself. You prevent rejection, but sacrifice connection. You silence your pain, but in doing so, you silence your needs, your desires, your emotional existence. You learn to survive by disappearing, and now you don't know how to reappear without feeling dangerous, exposed, or unworthy. This is the psychology of people who stay silent when they're hurting. And if this is you, you're not broken, you're not weak, you're not dramatizing your life. You are someone who has been trained by experience to believe that your pain must be managed privately, even at the cost of your own emotional well-being. And today, we're going to explore the truth behind that silence, why it formed, what it cost you, and how you can finally reclaim the voice that was never supposed to be lost. To understand the silent sufferer, we need to explore the psychological architecture behind this trait. This isn't just being quiet, it is an entire internal system forged by early relational environments and reinforced by lived experience. Term 1. Avoidant attachment. Avoidant attachment doesn't mean a person doesn't feel deeply. It means they learned early on that showing those feelings was unsafe or unreciprocated. If caregivers dismissed pain, mocked vulnerability, or were too overwhelmed to respond, the child adapted. They learned. Cry less to be loved more. Need less to stay safe. Speak less to avoid conflict. Neurologically, avoidant attachment is tied to suppression of emotional activation in the right anterior insula, which processes internal emotional states. In other words, your brain literally gets better at hiding feelings, even from you. Term 2. Hypervigilance. Many silent sufferers are not calm. They are scanning. They are managing the emotional temperature of every room. Hypervigilance is a trauma-based state where the nervous system remains alert, anticipating danger or disappointment. This leads to overanalyzing tone, anticipating rejection, monitoring others' moods, predicting conflict before it happens. Silence becomes a strategy to prevent triggering emotional chaos. Term 3. Learned helplessness. Coined by psychologist Martin Seligman, learned helplessness occurs when a person consistently experiences situations where nothing they do changes the outcome. Eventually, they stop trying, not because they don't care, but because their nervous system has been conditioned to expect futility. If you spoke up in childhood and nothing improved, or things got worse, your body learned silence equals safety. Expression equals danger. The neuropsychology behind the silence. When emotional expression repeatedly leads to pain, the brain shifts towards self-soothing mechanisms. The prefrontal cortex overregulates to suppress emotional impulses. The amygdala associates vulnerability with threat. The autonomic nervous system favors a freeze response. This creates a pattern where emotional pain triggers withdrawal instead of outreach, internalization instead of expression, numbing instead of naming. Your silence is not a personality trait. It is a neurological adaptation to emotional environments that demanded self-erasure. Silence might look peaceful, but internally, it's a battlefield, because every time you swallow your pain, you're performing a quiet act of self-abandonment. You're choosing safety over authenticity, survival over connection, and it comes at a devastating emotional cost. The cost 1. Invisible grief. There's a type of grief that never makes it into the open. It doesn't come with tears or rituals. It sits in the chest, tight, shapeless, unnamed. It is the grief of never having been fully known, of being physically present but emotionally unrecognized. The cost 2. The loneliness of the unspoken people who suffer in silence, feel lonely even in rooms full of love, because connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like walking into a war zone unarmed. Loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of being understood. The cost 3. Chronic self-invisibility. When you hide your pain long enough, something tragic happens. You begin to believe that your emotions truly don't matter, that your needs are optional, that your voice is unnecessary. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future you'll never have." Silent sufferers know this intimately. They sacrifice their future selves every time they silence their present needs. The core fear. Behind it all, underneath the quietness, lies one fundamental fear. If I show you who I am when I'm hurting, you will leave. This fear makes small moments feel monumental. Asking for reassurance feels codependent. Admitting disappointment feels dramatic. Expressing anger feels dangerous. Requesting help feels unworthy. So they remain silent. And the world continues to misinterpret their silence as strength instead of learned suppression. The silence learned in childhood doesn't stay there. It follows them into adulthood, shaping relationships, careers, and inner dialogue. Here are the most common adult manifestations. 1. They become the strong one, even when they're breaking. You might rarely ask for help. You're everyone's emotional anchor, but no one sees your storm. 2. They apologize for having needs at all. You might phrase every request as an inconvenience. Even simple needs feel like impositions. 3. They disappear when overwhelmed. Not intentionally, but your nervous system shuts down. You go quiet, distant, unreachable. Not because you don't care, but because you're trying not to collapse in front of others. 4. They choose partners who don't ask emotional questions. Silence attracts silence. You gravitate toward people who won't probe your interior world. It's safer, but lonelier. 5. They overfunction at work, but underfunction in emotional life. Professionally, you're competent. Emotionally, you're hesitant, guarded, withdrawn. 6. They gaslight themselves. This is perhaps the most tragic symptom. You might say things like, "It's not a big deal. I'm overreacting. Someone has it worse. I shouldn't feel this way." Self-gaslighting is how you maintain the silence without realizing it's destroying you. The first step of unlearning. Witnessing, you can't heal what you won't acknowledge. To witness your own pain means you stop minimizing it. You stop comparing it. You stop silencing it. You recognize that your silence is not evidence of strength. It is evidence of conditioning. And conditioning can be unlearned. Healing from silent suffering is not about suddenly spilling your emotions everywhere. It is about learning to let your inner world breathe again. Step 1. Inner child reparenting. You become the adult you needed, the one who listens, validates, and comforts. Ask your younger self, what were you never allowed to say? Then let them say it. Step 2. Micro-expressions of vulnerability. Don't start with full disclosures. Start with sentences like, "I'm struggling today. That hurt my feelings. I need a moment." Tiny truths rebuild emotional safety. Step 3. Rewiring the nervous system. Breathwork, somatic therapies, and grounding practices teach your body that expression is not danger. Vulnerability is not threat. Your voice is not a weapon. It is a bridge. Step 4. Choosing softness instead of silence. Softness is not weakness. Softness is the courage to remain open in a world that once taught you to close. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You cannot become who you truly are while silencing the parts of you that hurt. A closing truth. Your silence was never a flaw. It was a strategy, a brilliant one, a necessary one. But you are no longer living in the moment that required you to disappear. Now, your task is to return to yourself, to reclaim the voice you buried, to let your pain be witnessed, first by you, then by the people who have earned the right to hear it. And if this message resonated with you, if you felt seen in any way, know this: you do not have to heal loudly to heal fully. You only have to stop healing in silence. If this spoke to you, consider subscribing, sharing, or simply saving it for the days you need the reminder. Your voice matters. Your pain matters. You matter.